Welcome back, everybody, to the Teen Titans retrospective. We're finally getting back to looking at every episode of the original Teen Titans series. Today, we're starting with Season 3. So let's start the episode. This is Season 3, Episode 1, Deception, written by Rob Hoagie and directed by Michael Chang. This is a Cyborg-focused episode and starts off the main arc of this season, which is focused on Cyborg, and revolves around fighting the Hive, a new villain who we'll talk about in a minute, and the formation of Titans East, which we'll get into later on. The episode starts with a classic Titans action sequence. Jinx, Mammoth, and Gizmo are trying to steal some gold, and the Titans show up and try to stop them. The bad guys get away, but not before Robin places a tracker on them, which will lead them to the secret headquarters of the Hive Academy. The Hive Academy, if you remember, is a supervillain prep school that trains teenage supervillains, including but not limited to Jinx, Gizmo, and Mammoth, and they play a major role in this season's main arc. So Cyborg is planning on infiltrating the Hive headquarters, and he has these rings that can like holographically project a disguise, I guess, which he shows off, and basically it allows him to look fully human. It essentially shows what he used to look like before the incident. So, like, once again, we're dealing with themes of identity. Cyborg struggling with his own appearance, his relationship between his human and robot halves. He gets this technology that allows him to look more human, how he used to look and kind of how he wishes to be, but it's also just an illusion. It's not really a representative of him. So some interesting thematic stuff going on. Cyborg takes on the alias of Stone, and part of his disguise is that he can smash his fists together and like turn his skin into a stone-like quality, which gives him like super strength, which is like part of this fake power set and persona that he's taking on in order to infiltrate this supervillain headquarters. So he's Stone, he can turn himself into stone, that's the idea. What's interesting is that Stone is actually Cyborg's real name, Victor Stone. So just like Slade, we have a character that's like in disguise that's using like an alias, but really their alias is just their actual given name. And I think this is interesting for a couple reasons. Number one, it's kind of funny the way Titans will like throw references in like this, where it's like, ooh, that's their like secret identity. It's like, no, that's actually their true name. At the same time, they could potentially be intentionally drawing a parallel to Slade, where Cyborg is now infiltrating and going undercover as a villain, being a part and trying to regain the trust of the supervillain group. So maybe he's becoming a little bit more like Slade. The other interesting part of it, of course, is that Stone is Cyborg's real name, right? And he's under a disguise that makes him look like how he did before he became a cyborg. So Cyborg is disguised as Victor Stone. But again, it's a deception, it's an illusion. It's not who he truly is. Once he became Cyborg, that's his new identity. That's who he is. He's no longer just a dude, he's Cyborg. The other interesting thing about the Stone persona is that his costume like seems to be based on Power Man, like Luke Cage's original alter ego, like back in the 70s. He's got like the headband and stuff. I don't know why, but for whatever reason, he seems to be doing like a Power Man cosplay. I don't know if they just like thought that was a fun Easter egg to a completely different character, but I'm mentioning it. So there you go. Also, to avoid arousing suspicion, Cyborg leaves a robot version of himself, like a life model decoy that looks pretty much exactly like him, with the Titans to sort of like keep up the persona that he's with them. This robot Cyborg is kind of limited and mostly just says booyah. Throughout this episode, it says booyah 9 times.
9 times?
9 times.
Here are all of them now.
Booyah! 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 Booyah this!
So even though this is not technically real Cyborg, it's a robot copy of him, I'm still going to count it. So there's now that many more times we've said booyah. So we get a bunch of scenes of Cyborg infiltrating this supervillain prep school, and it's a bunch of like high school type stuff, but also supervillain training stuff. He has to take all these like supervillain related classes. Eventually he starts to gain the trust of Hive, specifically the members that we're familiar with, Jinx, Mammoth, and Gizmo. There's a couple scenes in like the school cafeteria where we see a whole bunch of characters, most of which who aren't really important. There's a couple that do eventually show up in later episodes, and I think this is the first time we've seen them. There's this like Batman looking guy, there's this dude who can like multiply himself, there's this like eyeball guy. They all show up again at certain points. And the other character that's of note is we see Bumblebee, who's mostly in the background. She doesn't have any lines in this episode, but she will become important later on in this arc. Cyborg starts to win over the trust of the Hive. He also gains the attention of the headmaster, Brother Blood, who is voiced by John DiMaggio, and he's fun. He's the main villain for this arc. Again, a character from the original comics, revamped and reimagined for this series. He's usually related to the Hive in some capacity, and is usually kind of like a cult leader type deal. That's kind of the case here. Brother Blood is interested in Cyborg for being, you know, super strong and also fairly confident, but it's also in like a very kind of creepy way. It gets more creepy later on, but I think you could read it as almost like a fetish, I can't say that word. Fetishization of Cyborg. What's important of note for this episode is that Brother Blood eventually figures out that Cyborg is undercover as Cyborg and offers him the opportunity to join him in his evil schemes and stuff. And he's like, what you're doing right now is you have an illusion, but what I can do is turn you back to human for real. And he briefly like turns Cyborg's hand back to normal. And Brother Blood's powers are a little vague, so I'm not entirely sure if that's something that he's capable of doing or not. But what I think is happening in this scene is that Brother Blood is shown to have some psychic abilities. And so I think what he's doing here is like casting an illusion, like manipulating Cyborg's mind so that he thinks he sees his hand turn back to normal, when in reality that's not what's happening. At least that's just my interpretation of the scene. The other thing he does is enforces a sort of mind control over Cyborg, which he's also kind of enforcing on the rest of the Hive. They describe it as everyone is kind of brainwashed. So the Teen Titans eventually kind of just get too anxious and are like, Cyborg, you're taking too long, we're stepping in. They show up at the Hive base, but oh no, maybe it's too late. Cyborg, as Stone, is now fully part of the Team Hive, and he's gonna fight the Titans. He even says the thing,
Attack pattern, Alpha!
that's the thing that the Hive says when they're fighting the Teen Titans.
Attack pattern Alpha!
Oh no, he's truly bad. So they have a big fight. The big interesting thing of this fight scene is when Cyborg as Stone goes up against the like fake robot Cyborg and just fucking destroys it, just completely demolishes it. And it's like, obviously it's a robot, so it doesn't really matter, but it's like pretty brutal. And obviously Cyborg is working through some stuff here. We see a little bit of a dark side of Cyborg here, and of course, there's the very kind of on-the-nose metaphor of Cyborg trying to destroy his robotic self in order to preserve his original human form. Cyborg's holographic ring smashes, which might be a bit on the nose. We see that the more Cyborg tries to reject his robotic self, the more his illusion breaks down. Brother Blood's then like, hey, use this super weapon that'll attach onto your arm cannon and you can kill the Titans with it. And for a second it looks like Cyborg's about to do it, but then of course he turns on Brother Blood and defeats the Hive instead. As he explains later, Brother Blood's mind control didn't fully work on Cyborg because half of his brain is electronic. Brother Blood can only control his human half, but Cyborg is half machine. Which I think is a really cool idea because it's actually the reverse theme of the previous Cyborg episodes, like the one where he fights Atlas, and in season 1 there's some of his parts where they like reaffirm that the parts of him that are human are the parts that still matter. But here we're actually doing the reverse of that. Cyborg was in danger because of the parts of him that were human, and the only reason he made it out is because of the parts of him that were machine. It's almost pushing back against those previous episodes, but it's really more just like, again, Cyborg wrestling with these two halves of himself and trying to figure out like what makes him him. And with this episode, we're like affirming Cyborg as his true identity. The parts of him that are robotic are still part of him and are still valid. Even though he wanted to destroy the robot side of him and he was like happy being Stone, being a version of himself, what he used to be, all of that ends up being an illusion. And the truth is that Cyborg is who he is now, regardless of who he was before. There's this really good line which I like where Jinx is disappointed that Cyborg sides with the good guys and rejoins the Titans again at the end of the episode, and she says, "You could have been one of us," and he says,
I could have been a lot of things.
which is kind of a really heartbreaking line. We hear a little bit earlier that like Cyborg kind of dropped out of high school after his accident and after he became Cyborg. I guess he just started being a Titan from then on and started being like, I guess I'm fighting crime from now on. Either way, Cyborg could no longer keep doing the things that he used to do. He could no longer be Victor Stone. He became someone else. He also has this really nice bookend sequences with Starfire. She's asking him about like how he feels and reflecting on Cyborg as she knows him versus this new persona of Stone. And she talks about how like, well, I met you as Cyborg, so as far as I knew, like that's just what you always have been. And she even has a line of like, I prefer the real Cyborg. It's basically just the I prefer the real Raven scene. Starfire, of course, is an alien and she's naive, and that's like part of her whole thing, so she doesn't know like what's normal on Earth necessarily. And Cyborg talks about like being in even though it was a supervillain prep school, he was in like a high school again, which he hadn't really been in that setting in a long time, and so he kind of felt a sense of normalcy. But to Starfire, he is normal as far as she's concerned. And again, we're like affirming that Cyborg is his real identity, which I think is a really cool idea. There's also, should I be the one to talk about this? There's also a bit of a race element to Cyborg's character, which I might not be the person to talk about, and I think this is more prominent in some other episodes. But of course, Cyborg is a person of color, but with that, of course, comes this like sense of otherness, which is obviously amplified with Cyborg being part robot. He looks even more different than what is considered the normal type person. But again, to someone naive and innocent like Starfire, the fact that Cyborg is half robot barely clocks to her, let alone the fact that he's a person of color. To like her pure innocent viewpoint, he's always been normal, regardless of what he looks like. And I think there's something really nice about that. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say on that. The other thing I wanted to mention about this episode, because it's a thing, which is the Cyborg and Jinx ship. This is a very popular ship amongst the Teen Titans community, and I forgot that it had like any basis at all in the canon, because like the two big Titans ships are Robin and Starfire, which makes sense. It's in the actual show. There are episodes that hint at and even confirm that they have feelings for each other. The other big one is Raven and Beast Boy, who like I completely did not pick up on at all my like first couple viewings of this show. I think because of Tara, and I was like, no, Beast Boy likes Tara. That's the end of that discussion. It's like he can like more than one person. That's a thing. But more importantly, there are little hints at it every now and then, although they are not as like explicitly prominent as Robin and Starfire. But as far as a large percentage of the fan base is concerned, Beast Boy and Raven is canon. And then I think possibly the third most popular ship is Cyborg and Jinx, which I kind of always attributed to like, well, Cyborg's the only other member of the Titans who doesn't have someone to be with, and I like Jinx because she's goth, so they're together now. But there is a little bit of precedence in the actual show, basically just in this episode. As Cyborg gains the trust of the Hive, they become more friendly with him, and it's even implied that Jinx has a bit of a crush on him. They even apparently went to the school dance together, which happened off screen.
I've been learning their combat technique, weapons, armor, and we had a dance.
A dance?
However, at the end of this episode, after Cyborg rejoins the Titans, him and Jinx have very little interactions. And that's kind of the end of that potential relationship as far as the series is concerned. Although it continues to be an extremely popular ship among Titans fan base for reasons. It's not a thing that I personally put much weight into, but if that's your thing, cool. One last little Easter egg. This milk carton shows the old headmistress of Hive Academy who is missing. I think the implication is that Brother Blood had her disappeared, maybe even killed, and took her job. But yeah, that's this episode. I really like it. I think it's pretty good. We're exploring Cyborg's character a lot more this season, and yes, we are touching on some of the same themes that we've seen before, but they're done in a slightly new way, which I think is interesting. So yeah, good episode. But that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll be back next week with another Teen Titans video. See you then.